This is an interview with Solihin Thom, longtime Subud member, uh, helper, and various other things. I'm going to let him say what those things are. Solihin, can you start by talking a little bit about what your life was like before you came into Subud?
Oh, gosh, quite a long time ago. What was my life like? Well, it was a young man traveling all over the world, trying to find himself, I guess, is really the way to explain it. I had grown up in a upper middle class family from Scotland and England. I'd lived in Kuwait for 18 years, but schooled, as I said, in Scotland. And I had no spiritual foundation at all, apart from what the school gave me. I was completely lost. I had no idea who I am. And I left school not really knowing what I wanted to do, nor had I any sort of inner life at all. And then I had a whole series of experiences in London, which were pretty extraordinary and sort of psychic and, in a way, evolutionary. And what happened was that I was sort of slowly propelled to try to find who I am. And so I went off to Sharjah, which is part of the Arab Emirates. I was there for a year. I then came back and then went off yet again to Afghanistan and stayed there for 2 years. And in that time, I started to understand that I needed an inner life. And I came across a lot of Sufis, a lot of, obviously, I was in yet again a Muslim culture. And yes, I sort of had, in fact, some extraordinary experiences in Afghanistan. One in particular where I had this experience of a unity, of a complete unified state. Myself, the environment, the people, the animals, the mountain, the everything around me. I was way up in the Hindu Kush, which is sort of a huge mountain range in Afghanistan. And I had this experience where there was this sort of total singularity. And that sort of stayed with me. And when I came back to England, I went and bought a boat, still not knowing who I was and what I was. And suddenly, actually came across a friend of mine who I had, got lost contact with. And he was in Subud, and I think I must have contacted him. And he said, "Well, there's a group down the road. It's called Loudwater." So I went there, and I was actually rather nonplussed, to be really honest. But somehow the idea of Subud really touched me because of this particular chap. But also that when I was in Afghanistan, I met two people, two Americans who I traveled with, who were both into Gurdjieff and Bennett, and they were going to John Bennett's academy in Gloucestershire uh, during the year that I was back in England. Excuse me.
And what what year,
So,
what year was that?
gosh, I think it must have been 72, 1972. And anyway, so I had these two buddies who knew about Subud. We talked about it whilst we were in Afghanistan. They were now in England. They, obviously were with Bennett. Bennett was, of course, Alicia, my future wife's godfather. So there was that connection there. And anyway, I ended up in Loudwater, talking to the helpers. And as I was talking to one of them, I had this experience of coming out of my body, but being attached to my body and being very tall, maybe sort of a couple of 100 feet through. I went through the roof of this building and looked down and saw my body, saw these three helpers, and it was an extraordinary, it was like I really tasted my soul. And so when I came back into my body, perhaps milliseconds later, or certainly a couple of seconds later, I had no other questions. I was satisfied that I had been touched by something extraordinary. So I came into Subud when I eventually got opened, mainly because every time they tested, they received that I wasn't ready, which is a bit sort of arcane, really. And I probably was ready. But anyway, I got opened and nothing happened. I had no inner experience at all. I just stood like a lemon for about a year and a half, actually. And then suddenly one day in the left hand, my arm moved, and suddenly I realized that there was this inner movement inside. And then around about that time, I became a Muslim for whatever reason. But anyway, I'd lived most of my life in Muslim countries. It had touched me deeply. I needed something for my outer life, and Islam really sort of called me. And during that process of the Shahada, where you do the declaration of faith, I had the same experience of coming out of my body and again looking down at Ridwan Isaac, who is the Imam who basically did the Shahada or he witnessed the Shahada with me, that I could see him from above, and I came back into my body. And so again, I had this inner experience of my soul was saying, well done. So that's the beginning anyway. So it sort of transformed, me from a sort of someone who had no idea of who I was to someone who thought I thought he knew something about himself at an inner level. So that was the beginning.
So if you had any experience around Bapa?
No, no, no. I had absolutely no experiences. I mean, I'd met him quite a few, not met him, but I had been around him very many times, mainly in England, and also in Cilandak in Indonesia. To be really honest, I've never been a sort of I'm going to be very rude here, and I know a lot of Subud people will take umbrage, but I've never been into gurus or teachers, mainly because feel that I'm a teacher myself, and I know my own propensity of being who I am, and so I have this sort of slight separation from the reality of what Bapa meant or is or was or should be or whatever. However, I did have some dreams with him coming to me, which were quite momentous, and and it was at the sort of beginning of the work that I started to develop in my time. I think because of Subud, and basically he came to sort of tell me that I needed to be on the straight and narrow, and that what I was being given was a gift, etc., etc. So yeah, some dreams, but not anything when I was around him. It was sort of nonplussed. I've been rather sort of separate from the main body of Subud for most of my life.
So did Subud have anything to do with your coming into the kind of work that you do?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I mean, I have no idea actually, but I when I came into Subud, I actually started a business with a friend, the same friend that had originally talked to me about Subud. So we started a transport business, a rather ropey old thing, which ended up with about five trucks running around England, and it was an express delivery service. And during that time, I was bottle washer, engineer, mechanic, salesman, CEO, accountant, driver, etc., as well as employing some pretty awful Subud members, I might tell you, who never came to work or rang up to say that they had received that they shouldn't be working. So I must say that my early days in Subud was not sort of characterized by Subud members being, up for the job, basically. So I think in a way it's made me be rather separate from the whole organization. I hope you don't cut all of that out. Anyway, so what happened was that I hurt my back, and I was told to go and see an osteopath. I didn't know anything about osteopathy. And this lady called B Went, who was in London, and I went to B Went, and I was lying on the table, and she sort of pulled me around and felt my back and said, "Yes, it's a rib," and manipulated my body, and there was a nice clunk, and I felt much better. And as I was lying there, this inner voice said, "This is what you should be." So that was the first real sort of time I experienced this inner voice. And since then, I've experienced my inner voice quite a number of times, which has been great. It's been a real guidance to me. So it took me another 2 years before I was able to go to osteopathic school. The same inner voice actually occurred when I met my wife, Alicia, who I was putting on a party for Subud members, and I was late. running this transport business, it was a very vicarious sort of situation where you never knew whether you were going to be days on the job or hours on the job or whatever. So anyway, I was late for this party, and came in, and this young woman was sitting back to me, and my pal who had brought her to this party was talking to her. And as I came round the corner, I just could see the back of her. And this voice inside me said, "This is the girl you're going to marry."
Hmm.
So there you are. So unfortunately, my children heard this story many times, and none of them have had this little inner voice that says, "This is the man you're going to marry," or "This is the girl you're going to marry." So
It's
telling
pretty
stories is not
unusual.
always so useful.
So you saw her and you felt that she was the woman that you're going to marry. So how
Well,
did you?
this voice said, "This is the
Ah,
girl you're going to marry." I didn't see her. I only saw the back of her. So that was the extraordinary thing. I hadn't even, yes, introduced myself. And
so
actually, we did introduce ourselves, and we talked all night. And the chap she had come with was completely demoted to the end of the table, and we just chatted. And that was the start of our courtship, which lasted a couple of years. We were very innocent and uh, very pure, as they might say. We just chatted and chatted and chatted and chatted, and have continued to do so. It's been good.
so how did you get into your current work?
Well, as I said, I had this feeling of wanting to become an osteopath, so I went to osteopathic school. I was a I was a sort of mediocre student. I was never very good at school. I have a twin brother. He was top of the class. I was bottom of the class. So schooling was not a great thing for me. I'm auditory dyslexic, so I sort of scramble up things I hear from other people. So school was not great, but I managed. I got through and I passed, etc., etc., and I became extremely successful very quickly, which was extraordinary. We were in the sort of wave of doing cranial osteopathy in London. I created a practice, started to have other people come and work with me, which is great. And during that time, we came across some American chiropractors who came over to England to teach us kinesiology and using mudras, these sort of hand positions or hand modes that were a gesture language that we use. So I was taught this particular piece of work, which is called clinical kinesiology, which was extraordinary because then we could ask the body, the person in front of us, well, what's really going on? What do we need to do with you? And it was very mechanical, I might say, and rather, yeah, very practical. It worked terribly well, and we were very impressed. And I used this work for some while, a couple of years, I guess. And then one day, my mentor, who had just flown over, was killed, unfortunately, in Wales. And I had this inner experience of meeting him about 10 days, 2 weeks after he had died, and freeing him of some force that was sitting inside him that prevented him from his soul from going. I'm not going to go into that particular story, but basically during that process, I received a hand mode myself, which enabled me to interpret what was going on with him. And after that, I started to receive every day, I mean, sometimes, multiple mudras, hand modes. So these positions of finger positions that are like a language. So this body of work was sort of downloaded into me over the next 3 or 4 years, and actually has continued in the last 45 years, but I haven't really received very many mudras since. I mean, a few, but not very many. So the body of the work has changed dramatically over the last 45 years because my understanding obviously has changed. The way that we deliver it has changed. The sort of the modeling has changed. In other words, I started as an osteopath and as a therapist, and now the model of the work that I've developed has become a narrative-driven process where we pull the narrative, the story that the person holds. And as we know that everything carries weight or gravitas or a force, so these forces hold the body in particular states or dysfunction. And when you work with the story, the body then unwinds because the force dissipates. So that's basically what we do. We listen to the story and work with their story, and it works terribly well. So I'm still teaching, actually, which is good. Not very much, but I've got lots of people all over the world doing the work, and new people coming in, which is very rewarding.
So how did you end up in Turkey?
Good story. Yet another story. See, I'm full of stories. Well, we went and worked in Russia for 7 years. Went to to work with a large corporation of about 30-odd thousand people to put the work, the constellation work that I've developed, or Alicia and I originally developed many years ago. And this is based on the life forces and the different natures of a human being. So we took that work into business and into this particular conglomerate because the owner wanted us to change the corporate culture to something that was honest, upright, no stealing, no bribery, no corruption. To really transform the way that they did business in Russia. So that's what we did for 7 years. It was an incredibly hard job. Very rewarding, I have to say, in terms of all sorts of ways. I mean, I really loved being in Moscow. Alicia got a little exhausted by the end, actually. We were working hand in hand. And so eventually she said, I can't do this any longer. So, and by that time we had been escaping to Turkey. So what had happened was that we were so overworked that we needed time out. And so we looked to see where could we find a place to live, just to have a sort of pied à terre. So we looked at the map, and actually Turkey was the quickest place to go to from Russia. So we went Moscow to Antalya. Alicia came over, found a place in this little space called Kalkan, and we started going every month, flying for 3 days to decompress, and then flying back to Moscow. And we did that for 4 years. Actually, 5 years. And it was great. It really decompressed us and really allowed us to be well. And then we came here, and we said we'll stay here for a year, and here we are 9 years later. So we have a great life here. There are lots of expats from England and from Europe. We have a good social network. I exercise. We swim in the Mediterranean 3 times a week. We do. Just yesterday I did 4 kilometers. I'm completely exhausted. It was very cold. We do Pilates. We walk. We garden. We have a veggie garden. We have we grow our own olives and pomegranates and other fruits. So we're very fortunate.
Yeah. So, are there any particular spiritual experiences that you've had that stand out that you'd like to share?
Um, wow, that's a very good question. I think the ones that have stood out are the times that I've experienced this soul, my soul, and its size and its shape and its presence. So yes, no, I mean, other than that, I haven't had any sort of great body of water being sucked into my body or into my mouth, or I haven't been taken up into the stars or anything like that. But I know that I have a soul. I know that my soul is present. I know my soul when it talks to me. Um, I'm very forgetful. I have a very point, what's the word? I have a very powerful genetic coding to switch off. And so the pattern that I inherited from both my mother and father is to switch off from really being totally mindful and aware of who I am. So that's been my sort of pervasive process in my life, is to switch on into my spiritual life, into my inner life. And we've lived in these very strange places like Russia and now here in Turkey, where there are no Subud members at all, or very few. Maybe there's one or two here in Turkey. I occasionally meet them, but it's very rare. In Russia, we weren't allowed to communicate with the Subud group there because of our political position in the hierarchy of Russia. So we were forbidden to have any contact with the group there. I mean, initially we did, and then they found out that we were part of Subud, and we were basically banned. And basically we were told, you are not allowed to do this, and erase everything out of your website that has anything to do with Subud. So I've been a sort of outlander is that right? No, an outlier for a long time, that we're on our own. And so Subud, the Lathan and me is what's important, not the group system, not the organization. I'm not part of a ummah, if you like. I have been a Muslim, as I indicated, from 1973, but I have to say that Russia completely killed my religious sentiments, and being here has pretty much done that with Islam. And so I really just hold inside myself that God is always here and the angels are also. And that's it. That's what I hold inside me. So I don't have any, I don't go to the mosque any longer. I don't do my prayers. I don't do that. I do Lathan, but with my pals in Zambia or Greece or America, in Los Angeles, or occasionally in England. So I do Zoom Lathans, and that's it. So yeah, it's a funny old life, but I mean, it's been good. We've been very, very blessed. We have 4 great children who are really quite functional, doing well in life, and very much in their own way surrendered to God, which is the most important bit. So I'm very lucky. So I didn't answer you really, but no, the answer is my jiwa is the fact that I can actually have felt and experienced and know that it's there, and know when I've separated myself from it, it'll tell me, which is great.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions, but if you have anything you'd like to say more, that's.
I could go on. You know that I'm a raconteur and and my work has been about pulling up narratives. No, I think I've probably done a good job here. I think you've got a taste of me. What else can I say? Um, no, I think the most important bit is that I have not been really a sort of an important part of the cog of the wheels of machination of Subud. But I've been, as I said, an outlier, and yet the latter hand has never failed me and has always been present, even though it was a rocky start at the beginning. And I think the fact that actually I experienced these things prior to Subud was really important for me to realize that it's not Subud. It's I was already opened in a different way, and that Subud has given me a comfortable place to be in, even though sometimes I find it uncomfortable. Um, yeah, so I think that's the important bit here. Does that help?
Yeah, sounds good.
Good, good. Well, thank you for videoing me. Will I get the opportunity to have a look?
Yeah, as soon as this is processed, I'll send you the link.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
I'm going to stop the video now, but we can talk for a little bit later. Just
Good. Okay.
let's see.
You done that?
I am still in the process. Keep